You know, it's funny. I was walking through the grocery store the other day,
Oh, yeah.
and the radio was playing a love song. Then I look at the magazine rack, and I swear, like, three different headlines were all about finding love
It's everywhere.
everywhere. And then I walked past the greeting card aisle, and it was just, I mean, drowning in red and pink. And it just hit me. The word love is absolutely everywhere. It might be the most, I don't know, overused word in the human
Mhm.
language.
It's saturated, yeah. It's in our ads, our politics, our pop culture. It is the air we breathe, culturally speaking.
Exactly. But here's the central tension, and this is really the hook for today's deep dive. If love is everywhere, if we are swimming in it, why does the actual definition of it feel so lost? Why are we all so confused by it?
It's a paradox. We're obsessed with the concept, yet the source we're looking at today argues we are starving for the reality.
Yeah.
We have the word, but we might have lost the meaning.
And the source frames this in a way that, well, it really stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
It suggests that for a lot of people, what was meant to be this beautiful, life-giving thing has turned into...
Something sour.
Exactly, and I'm quoting here, a sour experience, or just a fading word.
A sour experience.
Yeah.
Wow. That is a visceral way to put it.
It is. It's this idea that the word promises everything: connection, safety, warmth, and delivers, well, confusion or pain. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking a really fascinating article titled Love Lifted Me by Gospel Lekia. It was published in Christian Living just today, February 3rd, 2026.
And we should set the table here properly. This is not a relationship advice column. We are going to talk about how to optimize your dating profile or 5 ways to keep the spark alive.
No, thankfully.
This is an exploration of a theological argument, a philosophical one, really. The author, Lekia, is making a very specific, very bold claim that love isn't a human emotion. It's not a language we invented to describe how much we like someone. The argument here is that love is the very nature of God imparted to humanity. And the reason it feels so sour for so many people is simply because we've tried to separate the fruit from the root.
And that's really the mission of this deep dive. If you're listening and you've ever felt that disconnect where the word love feels hollow or you're cynical about it, this text is aiming to offer what it calls a click of a lock moment, a definition that actually fits the mechanism of the human heart.
I love that imagery, the click of a lock. It implies that when you get the definition right, something just opens up.
So let's get into the weeds here. The author starts by tackling definitions, and he does it by throwing out a phrase we hear all the time. You've probably said it. I know I have. Love is many things to many people.
And he completely rejects that.
Flat out. He calls it misleading.
Which is a strong stance to take in a pluralistic world, right? We like to think love is subjective, but Lekia argues that love fails precisely when it's separated from its origin. We tend to think of love as this dramatic rush of emotions.
Right, the butterfly feeling, the adrenaline, the sweaty palm.
The Hollywood version.
Exactly.
But the text argues that there's just biology or psychology or infatuation.
Yeah.
True love in this framework isn't a reaction. It's pure and originates from the creator of life. It's an entity, not a feeling.
So if it's not that rush of adrenaline, what is it? Because the text uses some really beautiful, almost poetic imagery to describe what love should feel like.
It does. He describes love as a universal language that leaves no creature in doubt. It doesn't need translation. He compares it to the hush of a gentle wave.
The hush of a gentle wave, that's so calming.
It is. It's consistent. But the metaphor that really stood out to me, and I think this is crucial for understanding the author's point, is the environmental one. He compares love to air or water or the sun.
Things that are abundant, things that are free.
Things that are just, well, there. Love, according to the source, was present long before we could lift a finger. It's a resource that sustains us. But here is the flaw in human psychology that the author points out, and I think this is brilliant.
What's that?
Because we're so focused on the dramatic manifestation of love, the big romantic gesture, the parade, we act like love has only arrived when we physically see it in front of us.
So we miss the fact that, like oxygen, it's been sustaining us the whole time.
Exactly. We are holding our breath, waiting for a special kind of air while we are already breathing.
That is a powerful shift in perspective. We are waiting for an event, but love is the atmosphere. And to really drive this home, this idea of quiet love versus dramatic love, the author shares a story, and I have to say, the protagonist of this story has the coolest name I have heard in a long time.
Daniel Apache.
Daniel Apache. It sounds like an action hero. Apache Takes Manhattan.
It really does. The text even calls it such a dramatic name, but his story is actually very grounded, very quiet. It's the opposite of an action movie.
So lay it out for us. Who is Daniel Apache in this context?
So Daniel is a man who had been praying for love. Specifically, he was yearning for a genuine friendship. He wanted connection. And the text says years went by with no sign of it.
Or at least no sign that he recognized, right?
He's looking for the parade. He's looking for the fireworks. So here's the scene. Daniel is waiting outside a meeting hall one day. She's going through some personal challenges, heavy stuff, but he's keeping it to himself. He's feeling pretty low, pretty isolated.
And then the interaction happens.
A woman from his fellowship approaches him. She greets him, asks how he's doing, very standard stuff. And then, without knowing anything about his specific problems, she hands him a book.
A book.
Just a book.
And this is the pivot point of the whole anecdote. Because how does Daniel react? He doesn't fall to his knees in gratitude.
No, he's totally unimpressed. He's actually a little annoyed. He thinks, why is she giving me a book I didn't ask for? He assumes she just had nothing else to do. Maybe she was cleaning out her house and saw him as a convenient dumping ground.
He projects his own cynicism onto the act.
He does. He takes it home and literally tosses it in the corner of his room.
Right.
He ignores the delivery vehicle because it didn't look like the love he was praying for.
He wanted a grand answer, and he got a paperback.
But that paperback sat there. It waited.
It did.
And weeks later, out of boredom or maybe desperation, he picks it up.
Reluctantly picks it up.
And what does he find? The text describes it as the balm he needed. It was like rain on a parched land. The content spoke directly to the secret struggle he was having.
But the twist here isn't just about the content of the book, right? It's not just, hey, good reading recommendation.
No, it's about what the book represented. That moment, that simple gesture of handing over a book, that was the seed. The text says the answer to his prayer had already arrived, standing quietly at the door like a thief in the night.
Like a thief in the night. I paused on that because usually that's a scary phrase. It implies danger. But here
it implies stealth. It implies that love sneaks up on you. It doesn't kick the door down with flowers and chocolates. It slips a book into your hand. The text mentions they eventually built a godly relationship and a deep friendship. But Daniel almost missed it entirely.
Because he was looking for the wrong packaging.
Exactly. It really reinforces that idea that love is often quiet. It's mundane. And speaking of humble origins, the source transitions from Daniel Apache to the ultimate theological example in this framework, Jesus.
Right. The Nazareth paradox, if you want to call it that. The author makes a point that Jesus didn't just drop out of the sky glowing. He lived an everyday life in Nazareth.
People saw him daily. They probably bought tables from him. They knew his family. And because of that familiarity, they neglected his gift of love. It's the same pattern as Daniel Apache, just on a cosmic scale.
The text has this great line, people expected the sun to rise from the palace.
But instead it rose from a manger. They wanted a king on a white horse, and they got a carpenter from a small town, born to parents with little to their names.
And yet the author argues that this figure, from this humble background, embraced the world in a way that just shattered social norms.
He creates a really sharp contrast here between human behavior and this divine love. He points out specific biblical moments like Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners. Now, we hear that today and think, oh, that's nice, he's inclusive. But we have to remember, in that context, that was a massive scandal.
It was social suicide.
Completely. It confused the religious teachers. They asked, why does your teacher eat with these people? And Lekia makes a really sharp observation here that I think applies to every single one of us listening.
Okay.
He says that in our religious affiliation, or honestly even just our social circles, we often shy away from those we feel are beneath our righteous standing.
Ouch. Yeah, that hits home. We curate our feeds, we curate our friend groups, we segregate ourselves based on who we think is worthy or on our level.
Exactly. We build walls. But the argument here is that Christ's love broke segregation. It tore the veil. He didn't wait for people to be good enough. He loved them while they were, as the text quotes, yet sinners. Even at the tomb of Lazarus, the observers couldn't help but say, see how much he loved him. It was undeniable, visible action, but grounded in absolute humility.
So we have this picture of love that is humble, quiet, stealthy, and it breaks barriers. But then the author pivots. He moves from the examples to the diagnostic. He decides to deconstruct how we practice love, or fail to, by looking at the famous love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13.
This is where the rubber meets the road. The author claims that the reason the center cannot hold, a great Yeats reference there in so many modern marriages or relationships, is found right here. We treat 1 Corinthians 13 like poetry for weddings. It's what you read while lighting a unity candle.
Right.
But the author treats it like a diagnostic manual for a failing engine.
So let's dive into some of the specific traits he analyzes, because he flips some very common modern phrases on their heads. The first one that jumped out at me was about rudeness and provocation. The verse says, "Love is not provoked."
This is a tough one. The author contrasts this with the phrase we hear all the time, "Don't step on my nerves."
I've said that. I've definitely heard it. "You're getting on my last nerve." It's a warning shot.
It is. But the text asks a provocative question. What happens when your nerve is stepped on? Because here's the reality. In a marriage, in a friendship, in an office, your nerves will be stepped on. It is inevitable.
So if your definition of love is "I will love you as long as you don't annoy me,"
Then that's not love. That's a contract. That's a truce. The author argues that true love, the God kind of love, turns the other cheek. It absorbs the impact. It doesn't boss others around. It is not easily provoked.
so "don't step on my nerves" is actually a defense mechanism, whereas love is defenselessness.
That's the argument. It's about not retaliating. Then he moves to self-seeking.
Love does not seek its own. The author observes that the world is a constant toil to be ahead of everyone.
We're constantly comparing ourselves. Who is winning? Who is ahead? Who is right? But the text connects this to the scripture. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends.
That is the polar opposite of the rat race.
It is. If you are constantly trying to win the argument or win the career, you cannot love. You have to step out of the race. You have to be willing to lose ground to gain the relationship.
That is countercultural, to say the least. Then there is this mental aspect the source mentions regarding thinking no evil. And this part really convicted me. The text talks about rehearsing wrongs.
Oh, that is such a vivid image. Rehearsing wrongs.
It's like you're practicing the argument in the shower. You know that feeling. You're going over every bad thing the person did, polishing your closing statement, getting your facts lined up.
We have all done it. The text calls it entertaining malice. It's like you are directing a play in your head where you are the victim and they are the villain.
And the instruction in the text is so blunt, it just says, wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Stop the rehearsal. That mental loop isn't just unhealthy. It's the antithesis of love. You can't love someone while simultaneously building a legal case against them in your mind.
Wrap it up. I need to put that on a sticky note on my mirror. Then we get to rejoicing in truth versus iniquity. This one got a bit darker, honestly. The author talks about the eye for an eye mentality.
He does. He says that even in religious circles, people secretly have good feelings when an enemy falls. That thought of, he can't mess with me and go free.
It's karma. We love karma. We want to see people get what they deserve.
We do. I will show him how painful it is.
Mm.
That desire for revenge, or even just sitting back and watching someone fail, the source argues, is rejoicing in iniquity. It's taking pleasure in harm. And here's the quote that I circled 3 times in my notes. We can modernize the world how we want, but not the heart.
Wow. Say that again.
We can modernize the world how we want, but not the heart. He goes on to say, only the one who created the heart can modernize it.
That is profound.
It really is. We can change our technology, we can update our laws, we can build smarter cities, but that primal instinct for revenge, that eye for an eye setting, that is an ancient problem. No app fixes that. That requires a spiritual solution.
It really emphasizes that this kind of love isn't something you can just try harder to do. You can't just white-knuckle your way into not wanting revenge. It requires a change of heart. And that leads us to the endurance aspect. The text says, love never gives up.
And again, he contrasts this with our reality. We see parents giving up on children. We see couples giving up on each other. I mean, the divorce rate is what it is, but the text says hope is a stubborn thing because love is.
Hope is a stubborn thing.
Because love, in this theological definition, believes that no matter how bad an individual is, they can turn over a new leaf. It always leaves the door cracked open.
But isn't there a danger there of, being a doormat?
Well, the text isn't talking about enabling abuse. It's talking about the posture of the heart. It mentions that in human marriage, 2 become 1, but often, after years, the center can no longer hold and 1 becomes 2 again. They separate. But the text argues God's love is different. It unites forever. It crawls back looking for us even in our worst state. It doesn't walk away when things get messy.
Which brings us back to the title of the article, Love Lifted Me. Because, let's be honest, everything we just described, not being provoked, not rehearsing wrongs, loving your enemy, that sounds impossible. If human love is prone to breaking, and we have all these flaws, how do we get this lifting love?
This is the conclusion of the theological argument, the mechanism of the lift. The expert view here is that the love that can lift us must come from outside of us.
It can't be a DIY project.
No. The text says it cannot be a product of our fallen nature. You cannot pull yourself up by your own shoelaces. If you are sinking in quicksand, you don't need positive thinking. You need a hand from solid ground.
So what does that mean practically, according to the source? How do we access this?
It means we have to stop relying on love rooted in human wisdom and self-interest. The author sets up a litmus test to prove this.
I saw that. He lists a bunch of good deeds.
Right. He says you can preach eloquently, you can give generously to the poor, you can receive public admiration, you can be a pillar of the community.
Yeah.
But the litmus test is love. It's the only true identity. You can do all the stuff, the charity, the attendance, the posting on social media, but if you don't have the specific, endure all things, not provoke love, the rest is just noise. It's a clanging cymbal.
And the solution offered.
You have to become a beneficiary before you can become a donor.
That's a great way to put it. You have to receive it to give it.
The text says, only when we become beneficiaries of this can we become donors of it. We need to experience that redeeming love, the kind that lifts, before we can reflect it to anyone else. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you haven't felt that hush of a gentle wave yourself, you can't offer it to your spouse or your neighbor.
It really circles back to that idea of origin we started with. If you cut the flower from the root, it dies. If you cut love from its divine source, it sours. It becomes a transaction.
Precisely. It becomes just a word, a fading word on a billboard that nobody believes anymore.
We've unpacked a lot here. We've gone from the click of a lock to the story of Daniel Apache finding love in a rejected, dusty book. We've looked at the humility of Nazareth, the scandal of eating with sinners, and finally this rigorous challenge of 1 Corinthians 13, stopping the rehearsal of wrongs.
It's a dense text, but the message is singular. Human definitions of love based on emotions or self-interest are destined to fail. The center cannot hold, as the author repeats. But a love rooted in the nature of God is stubborn, forgiving, and capable of lifting.
It's definitely not the definition of love you get from a rom-com.
No, it's work. But it's the only kind that actually works.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought drawn from the very end of the source material. The author poses a question that acts a bit like a mirror.
It is a mirror, he asks. When the mirror of love, as described in the Bible, is held before you, who do you actually see?
Do you see a reflection of your own ideology, your own don't step on my nerves rules, your own scorecard of who owes you what? Or do you see the definition provided in this source?
It's a question worth sitting with.
Absolutely. It changes the way you look at the person standing next to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the definition of love. We'll see you next time.